Oop, there's fish. If you ever watch any of my Kokanee formula videos, you'll note that I go into a lot of discussion about color choice on your lures and depth because of the relationship between different penetration depths of different light colors. And so today I thought I'd do a fun little experiment where I'm going to use that same spectrum of colors on hoochies and put a camera down there at 0 to 60 feet and kind of see, does it really hold up? Does that pattern really reflect what's in that chart that I like to reference so frequently? Wow, that's a huge kokanee. It's got to be 17, 18 inches. Wow, that's a huge kokanee. I think it's giant. Okay, so what we got here is a series of hoochies with the black hoochie on the left, sort of a fuchsia pink hoochie, and purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And we're going to look at how these colors change, or at least our perception of these colors change as we go deeper underwater. So this is up near the surface, and the colors all look basically the same. The black actually kind of, to me, takes on a little bit more of a bluish color. That's the one on the far left. But everything looks basically the same as it did above water: pink, purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and then the dark red. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drop this thing down to 10 feet down and see what happens when it gets down there. It's going to swirl around a little bit here. Okay, so we've arrived at 10 feet deep. You can see that everything looks the same. To me, it feels like the pink isn't quite as vibrant as it was near the surface, but everything else otherwise looks basically the same. The yellow's kind of dulled a little bit, but the colors look much the same as they do near the surface, which is what we'd expect at 10 feet, because you're still getting fairly good light penetration of all the different colors of light at that depth. So let's go a little bit deeper and see what we can do. Okay, so we're going to start going now from 10 down to 20 feet. We're going to have the full spectrum of light available here, so nothing's getting filtered out in the top 20 feet in terms of color spectrum, but the amount of available light is going to decline. So some of the colors are going to become less vibrant. But there's a couple things I want you to note. Already as we're getting down to 20 feet, there's some interesting things going on with the pinks, orange, the green, and yellow here. Those four are really starting to brighten up overall in color. They actually look brighter than what they did near the surface. Now, their colors are actually more difficult to separate here. You can see the orange and the pink look very similar, and the green and the yellow are looking more like a bright white and less like their original color. And I will discuss that more, but let's go a little bit deeper. All right, so now we're headed down towards 30 feet. Most of the color spectrum's still here, a little bit less light, but the main thing I want you to take note of is on the far right that red is going to get a little bit duller, a little bit darker, and that's because red is the first end of the light spectrum that runs out as it goes deeper. This is why a lot of your deep sea fish are red colors, because it essentially makes them look black because there's no red light available at depth. But yeah, you can see that red getting less vivid. Everything else still looks pretty good. The purple's a little bit duller, but I think it's just because it's less light. It's not as bright of a hoochie. Okay, so now we're going down from 30 to 40 feet. For a lot of people, this is about the maximum depth that they're going to kokanee fish, because a lot of our lakes, the thermoclines usually form up somewhere between 30 and 40 feet. But there are lakes like Chelan, for example, where those kokanee often hang out 60, 80, 100 feet or deeper. But you're going to notice things are getting quite a bit darker now. As we start to bottom out, you'll note that that far right red one now looks very dull. Doesn't nearly pop as much, but that orange one is super bright. The yellow and green look almost pure white. The blue it still looks like blue. Purple's a little bit faded. That pink is still very vivid, which I'll talk more about. and black just looks black. It absorbs all the available light there, so it's always just going to look black. Okay, so now we're going to be heading down from 40 to 50 feet. One thing that you should note here, I think that's pretty interesting, is that, you know, most of the colors were still fairly bright, even at 40 feet where most of us are fishing. But some of these are standing out more than others. But the main thing that we're going to take away from this as we go down is that red is really going to drop out on the far right. And even the purple and the blue now become very difficult to determine what color those actually are. That's true too for the green and yellow, which are just to the right of the wire there that's holding them. They look almost pure white, and the pink and orange are very difficult to separate from each other. They look sort of like a mix of like a pink orange fuchsia kind of, but you can really note that that one on the far red one is very dull. There's a yellow perch swimming by. Check things out. So I'm just going to hit it with a light that's on my camera now, and that will let you see the colors, how they would appear to the human eye. So there they look. Yeah, now you can really see the blues and blacks, purples, greens, yellow. They all look very obvious to us. So those colors are very easily discernible. Let's go ahead and turn that light back off, and yeah, there we go. It's a nice contrast. All right, so why are the pink, the green, yellow, and the orange so bright, whereas the purple, blue, and red duller, and the black as well is dull as expected? There's a couple of things that could be going on here. One is that this camera could be sensitive to particular colors. That's a possibility. But I think there's actually something else going on here, and I'm going to bring you back to my hotel room to show you what's actually going on. Okay, so here's all those hoochies now back on my desk underneath white light. And you can see that none of them are particularly brighter than the next. I would say the blue is probably the dullest just because it has a clear head and it's a little bit older, so it's a little more faded. I wouldn't say one's substantially brighter than the next. But let's turn out the light and we can start getting to the bottom of the patterns that we saw underwater. Let me tap the lamp here. Okay, so immediately apparent, let me go and close the computer screen here. Immediately apparent is these two are glowing. Right, so the yellow and the green had glow properties. Now they all have glow eyes, but these ones have glow throughout. And that's probably why they looked more uniform white underneath the water and lower light, because the glow was just giving them a similar color pattern. They're both starting to fade now, and you're starting to get more separation in these colors. But what I really want to show you here is what happens when we hit them with UV light. Okay, now we're getting some really distinct separation of certain ones here. And that's because some of these hoochies have UV fluorescence. So when they talk about UV lures, they're talking about this fluorescence property, right? Now this isn't phosphorescence. Phosphorescence would stay after you take the light off. So this is just a black light. But what this UV fluorescence does is this material that has that property, like the orange one here, you can tell that one's really bright, and the yellow, the green, and the pink. So what happens with UV fluorescence is it absorbs the shortwave light coming off of this UV flashlight and then re-emits it at a longer wavelength, which we can see, right? So most of the UV wavelength is outside of our vision, if not all of it. The same is true for kokanee. So most salmon, when they're adults, don't have very good vision into the UV spectrum, but UV fluorescence, what it does is it actually re-emits that light in a longer wavelength that we can see and kokanee can see. And this is why I always recommend UV lures because they look brighter at depth. Because what would happen is if these weren't UV, especially this pink and orange, is they would be very dull. Like this one here on the right, that red one I'm pointing at right there. Look how dull that is. It has no UV fluorescence. Those other ones would look just like that, but because they're absorbing light and re-emitting it at a wavelength that we can see and fish can see, the lure looks substantially brighter at depth, which makes it a better target for these fish. So that's why I always recommend UV fluorescence in your lures if you can get it. All right, guys, I hope that helped. I'll see you next time out on the water. Fish smarter, not harder. Bye.